Husband invited his ex-wife to the gala, to humiliate her, unaware of her ownership of the company. He believed the gala would crown his legacy, a night of lights, power and laughter, at the expense of the woman he once discarded. To him, she was nothing more than a closed chapter, a scar he thought would never resurface. As the music softened and the spotlight burned bright, Marcus Bennett leaned toward his ex-wife and whispered words dipped in poison. "You don't belong in this room. Tonight, everyone will see you for what you are. Worthless, small, forgotten. I'll rise above you, and the world will cheer while you drown." Those cruel words, sharp as glass, pierced through the noise of clinking glasses and polite applause. He wanted to strip her dignity, to bury her completely under ridicule. But Marcus did not know, his arrogance blinded him, that the very empire he bragged about, the company he claimed as his crown jewel, was no longer his. The woman he sought to humiliate, his ex-wife, Sophia Bennett, was now the hidden owner of the business that made him proud. In her calm hands rested the truth that would dismantle his pride and crush his power. Sometimes the silence you mock is the very silence that prepares your downfall. This is the story of Sophia Bennett, the faithful wife turned betrayed victim, the ex-wife turned silent shadow, and the quiet storm who would one day rise not with bitterness, but with undeniable power. Before we begin, please subscribe to this channel. It helps us to tell stories of betrayal, resilience, and justice with the world. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and how this story touched you. The grand banquet hall shimmered with crystal chandeliers, the hum of polite laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Powerful men in tailored suits and women in glittering gowns filled the space. At the head table stood Marcus Bennett, Sophia's ex-husband, his voice echoing with pride as he raised a glass of champagne. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced, his smile sharpened with arrogance, "tonight we don't just celebrate business success. Tonight we celebrate victory over weakness, over dead weight, over mistakes of the past." The crowd chuckled. Heads turned. His eyes locked on Sophia, seated quietly near the back. Her black gown caught the light, but her face remained calm, unreadable. Marcus's mistress, Victoria Hayes, once Sophia's closest friend, leaned toward him, whispering with venom that carried across the table. "Look at her, sitting alone like a ghost. You've buried her tonight, Marcus. She has nothing left." Marcus smirked, the corners of his lips twisting. "Exactly as it should be," he muttered. Sophia's gaze lifted, steady, meeting theirs across the room. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. Her stillness was unsettling, like the quiet before a storm. The master of ceremonies called Marcus to the stage. With calculated pride, he stepped forward, adjusting his cufflinks. His voice boomed through the microphone. "We rise by cutting away the ones who hold us back. I am proof of that. Success comes not from loyalty to the past, but from courage to walk away." The audience laughed again, clapping in approval. Cameras flashed. The humiliation was meant to burn Sophia alive in silence. But Sophia did not bow. She folded her hands on the table, her posture upright. In her clutch lay sealed documents, her hidden weapon, her silent truth. As Marcus raised his glass once more, the applause thundered. Yet in that very moment, Sophia allowed the faintest smile to cross her lips. Not joy, not surrender. Just the quiet foreshadow of justice. Marcus basked in the spotlight, unaware that the very company he boasted of controlling already belonged to the ex-wife he had tried to destroy. The sound of boiling water hissed from the kettle, filling the tense silence of the Bennett kitchen. This was before the gala, when their marriage still carried the appearance of life. Sophia stood by the counter, clutching her phone. The screen glowed with the image she had just received. Marcus, her husband, caught in an embrace with Victoria, her supposed best friend. Her fingers trembled, but her voice was steady. "Tell me this isn't true, Marcus. Tell me the woman in your arms isn't Victoria. The woman who's been at my side for years." Marcus, dressed in a crisp shirt, didn't flinch. Instead, he poured himself a glass of wine, swirling it with calm arrogance. "Sophia, you've always been too sensitive. That picture doesn't change anything. What we have, it's business. It's survival. Don't twist it into more." Sophia's voice cracked, but her words pressed forward. Business? That's my best friend. That's betrayal. Do you even hear yourself? He set the glass down hard, the sound like a gavel striking judgment. Listen to me, he snapped. You've always been too soft. I need a partner who sharpens me, not one who drags me down with emotions and loyalty. Victoria understands ambition. You never did. Her heart shattered, but she refused to break in front of him. So you're choosing her? Over me? Over everything we built together? Marcus leaned closer, his tone low and cutting. I'm not choosing, Sophia. I've already chosen. You just didn't see it until now. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. The kettle clicked off, but neither moved. Sophia's hand lowered, her phone screen dimming, but the image remained burned into her mind. Her marriage collapsing in a single cruel revelation. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed quickly. The name Victoria glowed on the screen as he walked out, leaving Sophia alone in the kitchen with nothing but betrayal echoing in her ears. The night was heavy with silence. Sophia sat curled on the edge of her bed, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Her eyes were red, not from weakness but from the storm inside her. She scrolled through her contacts until her finger hovered over one name, Daniel, her stepbrother, the one who had promised long ago that he would always protect her. The call rang. Once. Twice. Finally, his voice came through, casual, almost careless. Sophia, what's wrong? It's late. Her voice broke, but she forced it steady. Daniel, I need you. Marcus, he's been with Victoria. I saw the proof. He's leaving me. You know what this means. I have nothing left but you. For a moment there was silence. She thought he was processing her words, preparing to take her side. Then he sighed. Sophia, Marcus already spoke to me. He told me everything. He said you were holding him back, that you're unstable. And honestly, maybe he's right. The phone nearly slipped from her hand. You're siding with him? My own brother? Daniel's voice grew sharper. He's the future, Sophia. He's building an empire. You... He hesitated, then continued coldly. You're sinking. Why should I chain myself to you when I could rise with him? Sophia's breath caught. Betrayal cut deeper from family than from any friend. So you'll abandon me too? After everything? A pause. Then Daniel spoke the words that shattered her last hope. Don't call me again. This is bigger than family. It's survival. The line went dead. The faint hum of silence filled the room. Sophia stared at the phone in disbelief, her hands trembling. The house was silent, too silent. Once it had been filled with warmth, laughter over dinner, quiet music in the evenings, whispered promises of forever. Now it was hollow, an echo chamber of loss. Sophia sat alone on the living room floor, the clock ticking relentlessly on the wall, every second mocking her abandonment. Her hands clutched an old photo frame. Her wedding day with Marcus. She studied the smiles frozen in time, the promise that had crumbled into betrayal. The longer she stared, the more the shadows around her seemed to whisper, You are nothing. You are alone. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she didn't sob. Her grief was quiet, contained, like fire smoldering beneath ash. She remembered her stepbrother's cold words. Don't call me again. This is survival. She remembered Marcus's sneer at the press conference and Victoria's poisonous laugh. The weight of betrayal pressed so heavy that the room itself felt like it was collapsing on her. Sophia's phone buzzed. Messages lit the screen. Mocking headlines, photos of Marcus and Victoria smiling before the cameras. Each one was a dagger, each caption a reminder that she had been left behind. For a moment, despair nearly won. She thought of disappearing, of surrendering to the silence that had swallowed her home. But then her eyes fell on another frame. This one of her parents. Their faces radiated strength, the same strength they had once whispered into her heart. Never let darkness decide your worth. Sophia wiped her tears. Her breath steadied. No, she whispered into the empty house. This is not my end. They may have abandoned me, but I won't abandon myself. The ticking clock kept on, but its sound no longer mocked her. It became a rhythm, a reminder. Every second was another chance to rise. Just as she pushed the photo frames aside, her phone buzzed again. This time not a headline, but an email. Subject line, job opening, assistant needed at Mason & Co. A small door of survival cracked open in the darkness. The office smelled of dust and old paper, paint peeled from the walls, and a single flickering bulb cast tired light over crooked desks. It was far from the glittering halls Marcus boasted in, but to Sophia this place was a lifeline. Mason & Co., a small, struggling accounting firm, had given her a seat when no one else would. Her first day began with a challenge. Mr. Mason, the weary owner, dropped a thick stack of account books onto her desk. "You said you're good with numbers," he muttered, raising a skeptical brow. "Prove it. These figures have been off for months." "Everyone before you failed." Sophia adjusted her glasses and nodded. "Give me until tonight." Her colleagues snickered from their desks. One whispered loudly, "She's desperate. Bet she won't last a week." Another laughed. "She doesn't even look like she belongs here." Sophia ignored them. Hours passed, her hands scribbling, her eyes scanning every page. Mistakes leapt out at her, patterns others had overlooked. She whispered softly as she worked, "You thought I was weak. Let me show you strength." By evening, her desk was covered in corrected sheets, neat columns of figures balanced perfectly. Mr. Mason returned, expecting failure. Instead, she slid the corrected ledgers toward him. "Here are your missing funds. And here's the fraud you didn't notice. Page 47. He froze, flipping through the pages, his eyes widening. You caught this?" Sophia straightened, her voice calm. "Yes, and if you give me a chance, I can turn these books clean in less than a month." The whispers in the office stopped. The same people who mocked her now stared in disbelief. Mr. Mason exhaled sharply, tapping the ledger with his finger. "Fine. You've earned tomorrow. But understand this. If you're right, you're not just an assistant. You're the future of this firm." The old office block stood like a skeleton, windows shattered, walls scarred by years of neglect. Most people saw it as a ruin, a place ready to be torn down. But when Sophia stood before it, she saw something else. Possibility. Beside her, Mr. Mason crossed his arms. "We can't afford to fix this," he said bluntly. "The board wants to sell it off for scraps. It's too far gone." Sophia shook her head, determination flashing in her eyes. "No, this can be rebuilt. This is not waste, it's potential. Give me the reins and I'll prove it." The workers nearby exchanged doubtful looks. One scoffed. "A woman like her? What does she know about sites like this?" Another laughed. "She'll quit by tomorrow." Sophia ignored the murmurs. She rolled up her sleeves, walked inside the crumbling shell, and began sketching out a plan on her notepad. She saw what they couldn't. The way broken beams could be replaced. The way light could pour through new windows. The way a derelict block could be reborn as a thriving workspace. Days turned into weeks. Sophia arrived first and left last, meeting suppliers, negotiating costs, encouraging workers with a firmness that surprised them all. Slowly, the site began to change. Dust gave way to fresh paint. Cracked floors were smoothed, and the skeleton of the building found new life. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Mr. Mason walked through the site, stunned at the progress. He found Sophia sitting on a stack of timber, sipping from a bottle of water. She looked exhausted but triumphant. "You were right," Mason admitted, his voice tinged with pride. "I underestimated you. This place. You've breathed life into it. You've breathed life into all of us." Sophia smiled faintly. "It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to myself that I was never broken." A courier arrived suddenly, handing her a thick envelope. Inside were legal documents, an unexpected investment proposal from a group of businessmen who had quietly been watching her progress. The polished oak boardroom table stretched wide, surrounded by skeptical faces. Investors who once dismissed Sophia as a forgotten ex-wife now sat upright, their eyes scanning the thick folder she had placed before them. The sound of pages flipping was the only noise in the room. One older man cleared his throat. "Mrs. Bennett, or should I say Ms. Bennett now," he began cautiously. "These numbers are impressive. But tell us, how did you turn a crumbling office block into profit in less than 6 months?" Sophia met his gaze without hesitation. I stopped seeing ruins, I saw opportunities. Where others saw loss, I saw foundation. And I built on it. That's what I'll do for your company." The room shifted. Men who had once smirked at her name now leaned forward, curious. One whispered to another, "She speaks with precision and confidence." Mr. Mason, seated at her side, tapped the documents. "She's the reason Mason & Co. is standing today. She saved us." "She can save you." Still one skeptic tried to jab. "But you're Marcus Bennett's ex-wife. Surely that makes you compromised?" Sophia's lips curved faintly, not in anger but in calm defiance. "No, that makes me experienced. I know what arrogance costs. I know how betrayal looks when it's dressed as leadership. And I will never let that destroy another company under my care." The silence was heavy. Then slowly, one by one, the board members nodded. Pens were drawn. Contracts were signed. For the first time, Sophia wasn't just surviving. She was being recognized. Not as Marcus's shadow, not as a victim, but as a leader with her own vision. As the last signature dried on the page, one investor leaned forward with a warning. "This deal makes you powerful, Ms. Bennett. But beware, Marcus will hear of this, and he does not forgive those who rise where he expects them to fall." The city skyline glittered through the tall glass windows of Sophia's new suite. From here the streets below looked small, distant, just like the version of herself Marcus once tried to bury. On her desk sat a sealed leather folder stamped with the golden crest of Crown Holdings, Marcus's proudest jewel. Her assistant, a young man named Caleb, entered with cautious excitement. "It's official," he said, placing another stack of documents beside her. "The board approved everything. You're now the majority shareholder. Crown Holdings, it belongs to you." Sophia traced the embossed letters on the folder, her face unreadable. For years, Marcus had used this company as a weapon of pride, a throne he thought untouchable. Now with one signature, it was hers. Caleb hesitated. "Do you want me to make the announcement?" Sophia shook her head slowly. "No, not yet. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes silence is stronger. Let Marcus have his stage. When the curtain falls, the truth will speak louder than I ever could." She stood, walking to the window, watching the city lights blink like stars at her feet. Memories of betrayal flooded her mind. Marcus's cruel sneer, Victoria's mocking laughter, Daniel's rejection. Yet standing here she felt no need for revenge in words. Her revenge was already written in ink. Her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Marcus Bennett to host Gala, celebrating Carter Enterprises' dominance over Crown Holdings. Sophia smiled faintly, a calm, knowing smile. "Celebrate it while you can, Marcus," she murmured. "You'll soon learn you were bragging about what was never yours." She opened the folder, pulled out the deed of ownership, and pressed her seal onto the final page. The quiet thunk of the stamp echoed through the suite, a sound of destiny locking into place. Sophia's office was quiet that evening, the glow of the city casting long shadows across the glass walls. She sat at her desk reviewing contracts when her phone buzzed. The caller ID froze her for a moment. Daniel, her stepbrother. The same man who had turned his back on her when she begged for help. She let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was calm, measured. "Daniel?" On the other end, his voice cracked with false warmth. "Sophia, it's been too long. I need to see you." Things haven't gone as I expected with Marcus. Her pen stilled. She leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "You mean the man you chose over your own sister? The empire you traded family for?" Daniel stammered. "I was wrong. I thought Marcus was the future. But he's unraveling, Sophia. He's reckless. Investors are whispering. People are saying you—" He hesitated. "You're the one rebuilding everything now." The silence stretched. Sophia tapped her pen softly against the desk. "And now you want to come back? After betraying me when I needed you most?" He sighed heavily, desperation leaking into his tone. "Please, I was foolish. I just need a chance. I'm still your brother." Her eyes hardened, though her voice stayed calm. "No, Daniel. Brothers protect. Brothers stand when the world falls apart. You're just another man who sold loyalty for scraps. And there's no place for that in my life anymore." The line went quiet. Daniel's breath caught, but no words followed. Sophia ended the call, her face serene. For the first time, she didn't ache from his betrayal. She felt free of it. As she set the phone down, a notification pinged. Marcus's invitation to his grand gala. In bold letters. "Celebrate our victory over Crown Holdings." Sophia's lips curved in a faint smile. The trap he thought he'd set for her was already a stage she was preparing to own. The city outside glittered with restless life. But inside Sophia's apartment, everything was still. The only sound was the delicate clink of a teacup as she set it on its saucer. Across from her sat Caleb, her loyal assistant, his voice low, his eyes alert. "They've sent the invitation," Caleb said, sliding the embossed card across the table. The golden letters gleamed under the lamp. "Marcus Bennett cordially invites you to the Gala of Triumph." Sophia studied it, her expression unreadable. "Triumph," she murmured, tasting the word as though it were bitter. Caleb leaned closer. "He thinks this gala will bury you. He wants the humiliation public. Final." Sophia picked up the card, turning it slowly in her hands. "That's what he doesn't understand. Silence isn't defeat. It's preparation." For a moment the room was silent again, the city noise muffled by the glass windows. Then Sophia reached into her drawer and pulled out the sealed ownership papers of Crown Holdings. She tapped them lightly against the table. "This isn't just an invitation," she said softly. "It's a stage. He wants me to be the shadow in the corner. Instead, I'll be the storm in the center." Caleb's eyes widened. "You're going to reveal it there? At his own gala?" Sophia's lips curved faintly. "Patience. Timing is everything. When he stands tallest, the fall will be greatest." The lamp cast long shadows across the walls. It felt as though the room itself was holding its breath, waiting. Sophia slid the papers back into the drawer and whispered, "Let him think he's won. For now, the night of the gala will not be his victory. It will be his undoing." The private lounge was drenched in velvet and gold. Marcus Bennett sat back in a deep chair, a crystal glass of golden liquor swirling in his hand. Across from him, Victoria Hayes reclined lazily, her smile sharp as a blade. The air was thick with arrogance and the scent of victory. Marcus lifted his glass. "Tomorrow is the night. I'll stand at that gala and finally bury her memory. Sophia will be nothing but a ghost the world laughs at." Victoria laughed softly, running her fingers along the rim of her glass. "She already is, Marcus. You broke her. She has no voice left. Tomorrow you only need to crush what's left of her pride." Marcus leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "And when I do, investors will see I'm untouchable. Carter Enterprises will rise higher than ever. They'll forget Sophia ever existed." Victoria tilted her head, a shadow of unease flickering for the first time. "Still, she's quiet. Too quiet. Don't you find it strange she hasn't fought back?" Marcus smirked, brushing off her doubt. "Silence means surrender. She's broken, Victoria. That's why you're here with me now, not her. She'll show up tomorrow because she's weak enough to think presence means dignity." Victoria leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And if she surprises you?" Marcus slammed his glass onto the table, liquor spilling. "She won't. Sophia Bennett is finished. And tomorrow, the world will see it." The velvet curtains shifted as a draft of air crept through the room, almost as though the walls themselves whispered warning. But Marcus only leaned back again, confident, blind to the storm waiting outside his golden bubble. Victoria's phone buzzed. A news alert flashed across the screen. Anonymous investors quietly shifting interest away from Carter Enterprises. She glanced at Marcus, but kept the screen hidden. Sophia stood before a long mirror, her reflection calm yet unshakable. The silk gown draped over her shoulders shimmered softly under the warm light, a symbol not of vanity, but of transformation. Tonight was not about beauty. It was about presence, silent power. Grace entered quietly, holding a small envelope. This came just now. From the investors. Sophia took it, breaking the seal carefully. Inside was a simple slip of paper, handwritten. "We stand with you. Reveal when the moment is right." No signatures, just solidarity cloaked in secrecy. Grace's eyes widened. "They know?" Sophia folded the note and tucked it into her clutch. "They don't just know. They're waiting. Marcus thinks he's the star tonight, but he doesn't realize the spotlight is shifting." Grace hesitated, watching her friend slip earrings into place. Sophia, what if he tries to humiliate you before you can act? Sophia's lips curved into the faintest smile. Let him. The louder the cruelty, the sweeter the silence that follows. I don't need to fight his words. I only need to reveal the truth when it matters. Downstairs, headlights flickered as a black-tinted car waited. The driver stepped out, holding the door open with a quiet bow. The city's hum was louder tonight, as if the streets themselves whispered anticipation. Grace touched Sophia's arm gently. Promise me one thing. Whatever happens, don't let his arrogance shake you. Sophia turned, her eyes calm yet burning with resolve. Grace, arrogance doesn't shake me anymore. It only reveals how fragile the arrogant truly are. As she stepped into the waiting car, her phone buzzed. A message lit the screen from an unknown number. Be careful tonight. Someone close to Marcus may betray him before you even have to. The entrance of the Grand Imperial Hotel blazed with light. Guests in glittering gowns and sharp suits streamed up the marble steps, cameras flashing like 1,000 tiny storms. At the top of the staircase stood Marcus Bennett, his arm linked with Victoria's, his pride swelling with every click of a shutter. Suddenly, a sleek black car rolled to a stop. The door opened slowly and Sophia stepped out. Her flowing gown shimmered under the lights, simple yet commanding. The crowd fell into a hush, whispers rippling instantly. Is that Sophia? One voice murmured. She looks different. Stronger, another whispered. Marcus's smirk returned quickly. He tightened his grip on Victoria and raised his voice for all to hear. Ah, the ghost appears. How bold of you to come tonight, Sophia. I suppose even shadows crave attention sometimes. The crowd chuckled at his cruelty, cameras snapping furiously. But Sophia did not flinch. She walked steadily up the steps, her polished heels clicking like a quiet drumbeat, her silence cutting sharper than any reply. Victoria leaned in, whispering loudly enough for nearby guests to catch. She still thinks she belongs in our world. At the top, Marcus stepped forward, blocking her path with exaggerated courtesy. Welcome, Sophia. But remember, tonight isn't your stage, it's mine. Sophia lifted her gaze, calm and unbroken. Then shine while you can, Marcus, she said softly, her voice carrying just enough for those nearby to hear. Because when the lights shift, pride has a way of burning out. The whispers grew louder, guests exchanging uneasy glances. Some laughed nervously, but others sensed the tension in her words. As Marcus turned to lead Victoria inside, a photographer's flash caught Sophia squarely. The image of her standing tall against Marcus's sneer spread instantly across phones and feeds, seeding doubt before the gala had even begun. The ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers, a sea of tuxedos and gowns moving in polished rhythm. Waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne, while a string quartet played softly in the corner. At the center, Marcus Bennett basked in the attention, his laughter booming as he shook hands with wealthy investors. Sophia entered quietly, her presence like a ripple through calm water. Heads turned, conversations faltered. Some guests greeted her with polite nods, while others whispered behind their hands. Still, her composure never wavered. A businessman leaned toward another, murmuring, "She shouldn't be here. But look at her. There's something different." Another replied softly, "She looks more in control than Marcus." Marcus noticed the shifting attention. His smile stiffened. He raised his glass, his voice slicing through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget why we're here tonight. To celebrate the power of Carter Enterprises and the triumphs that have made us unstoppable." The crowd clapped, though softer than before. Sophia stood at the edge of the room, clasping hands with one investor after another. Her voice was low, steady, almost invisible, but with every greeting, respect bloomed quietly. People leaned toward her, drawn to the stillness that carried more weight than Marcus's loud pride. Victoria caught the shift too. Her hand tightened on Marcus's arm. "They're looking at her," she hissed. "You need to draw them back." Marcus laughed too loudly, raising his voice again. "Don't waste your attention on ghosts, my friends. Shadows can't outshine the sun." But his words felt brittle, forced. The more he spoke, the more his arrogance cracked, While Sophia's silence filled the spaces his pride left hollow, a board member quietly excused himself from Marcus's circle and crossed the room to shake Sophia's hand. Cameras caught the moment, and whispers spread like fire. Why is the board showing her respect? The long banquet table glittered with silverware and crystal flutes, the centerpiece bursting with white roses. Guests settled into their seats, laughter rising like a steady tide. At the head sat Marcus Bennett, his posture tall, his pride swelling under the glow of the spotlight. Beside him, Victoria wore a smirk as sharp as her diamond necklace. Across the hall, Sophia was seated deliberately far from the head table. Marcus's designed to showcase her place. Yet distance did not weaken her. She sat straight, calm, her presence drawing quiet glances from investors nearby. Marcus lifted his glass, the crystal flute catching the light. "To new beginnings," he declared loudly, his voice aimed at Sophia more than anyone else. "To the future that leaves behind mistakes of the past." Laughter rippled across the table. Victoria leaned in, whispering just loud enough, "Did you see how she shrunk when you spoke? She can't stand the truth." But Sophia did not shrink. She lifted her own glass slowly, her movements graceful, deliberate. She raised it halfway, her gaze locking with Marcus's across the room. Her silence was louder than his toast. The investors near her exchanged looks. One whispered, "She doesn't look defeated. She looks like she's waiting." Marcus noticed, and his jaw tightened. He forced another laugh, louder this time. "Some people never learn when to walk away," he said, swirling his drink dramatically. "But tonight, they'll understand they don't belong here." Sophia finally sipped from her glass, unhurried, her eyes never leaving his. She didn't need words. Her defiance was in the stillness, in the way she refused to play his game. Just as Marcus leaned back, smug, one of the servers slipped a folded note onto his plate. He opened it under the table, his smirk faltering as he read the words, "She owns more than you think." After dinner, the ballroom shifted into casual mingling. Guests moved in clusters, glasses of champagne in hand, voices dropping into whispers. Marcus drifted among them, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, but his smile no longer carried the same confidence. The note he'd received still burned in his pocket. "She owns more than you think." Victoria tugged at his sleeve, her smile painted but her eyes unsettled. "Marcus, people are looking at her again. Investors who should be clinging to you are drifting toward Sophia. Why?" Marcus waved her off, though his laughter came forced. "They're curious, nothing more. She's a relic, Victoria, a broken piece of the past. I'll prove it before the night is done." Across the room, Sophia stood quietly with Grace at her side. She wasn't chasing attention, yet attention came to her. Subtle nods from businessmen, gentle smiles from investors. Even a board member once loyal to Marcus lingered at her side a little too long. One guest whispered behind a fan, "Strange, isn't it? She doesn't act defeated. She acts in control." Another nodded. "And Marcus? He looks nervous." Marcus's eyes darted to Sophia, catching her in a circle of quiet conversation. Their laughter was soft, respectful, not mocking. It rattled him more than outright defiance. His jaw tightened, his hand gripping his glass too hard. Victoria leaned closer, whispering sharply, "Marcus, you're losing them. Do something. Make the humiliation louder before she steals the room from you." His eyes darkened. "Don't worry. When the time comes, I'll make sure she remembers her place." Just then, a well-known investor approached Marcus, shaking his hand with a polite smile, but his words cut deep. "Impressive evening, Marcus. Though I must say, your ex-wife carries herself like someone who knows something we don't." The music dimmed. Lights brightened. All eyes turned to the stage as Marcus Bennett strode to the microphone, chest puffed out with arrogance. He held a leather-bound ledger in his hand, waving it for effect. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "tonight marks the crowning of Carter Enterprises. Our triumph over Crown Holdings is complete. We stand unmatched, unchallenged, unstoppable." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Marcus spread his arms wide, soaking in the glory. Then, from the back of the hall, a calm voice rang out, "Are you sure about that, Marcus?" The crowd fell silent. Heads turned. Sophia stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her presence commanding. She walked with quiet dignity until she stood at the edge of the platform. Marcus's smirk returned, but his eyes flickered uneasily. "Ah, Sophia, come to witness your final humiliation." Sophia didn't flinch. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a sealed folder. Slowly, deliberately, she opened it, revealing the stamped contracts. Her voice carried like steel wrapped in silk. "Crown Holdings does not belong to you, Marcus. It belongs to me. I am the majority shareholder. The board has recognized it, and these documents prove it." Gasps filled the room. The flashing of cameras grew frantic. Investors leaned forward, their eyes wide with shock. Marcus's face drained of color. "You're lying! This is a trick!" he shouted, slamming the ledger onto the podium. Sophia stepped closer, her calm gaze slicing through his panic. "No, Marcus. The only trick here was your arrogance. You built this night to humiliate me, but all you've done is hand me the perfect stage to reveal the truth." The audience murmured, whispers rising like a tide. Some laughed in disbelief. Others shook their heads, stunned. A board member stood up from his seat, holding a copy of the same documents Sophia carried. His voice rang clear. "She's telling the truth. Sophia Bennett owns Crown Holdings. And Marcus, your era ends tonight." The ballroom crackled with shock. Guests whispered furiously, cameras snapped non-stop, and the once roaring applause for Marcus had collapsed into stunned silence. On stage, Sophia stood tall, the documents gleaming under the lights like a crown placed on her head. Marcus's hand shook as he pointed at her. "You can't do this! You don't have the right!" Sophia lifted the stamped contracts high, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The right is already mine, Marcus. Signed, sealed, and recognized by the board. Tonight was supposed to be your triumph, but it has become my vindication." Gasps rippled across the hall. Investors surged forward, clapping, not for Marcus, but for Sophia. Board members who once sat silent now rose to their feet, their applause deliberate, echoing through the chamber. Victoria tugged at Marcus's arm, panic flashing in her eyes. "She's telling the truth. Everyone believes her." Sophia's gaze swept the room, calm and dignified. "This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. Arrogance may blind a man, but truth will always open the eyes of those who matter." The marble floor beneath her heels seemed to glow as she stepped forward, the spotlight following her. The documents stamped with her ownership were not just papers. They were the final chains breaking from her past. One investor approached, shaking her hand firmly. "Ms. Bennett, you've not only earned our respect, you've earned our trust." The crowd erupted, this time in applause for her. The same hall Marcus had planned as her grave of humiliation had become her platform of victory. Marcus staggered back, pale and sweating, as the microphone slipped from his grasp. His empire was crumbling before his eyes, and the woman he cast aside now stood as the one he could never surpass. The ballroom was in chaos. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Investors gathered around Sophia, shaking her hand, praising her composure. Cameras turned away from Marcus, who stood frozen near the podium, his pride collapsing like glass under a hammer. "Don't listen to her," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. "She's lying. She tricked you all." But no one rallied to him. Board members who once cheered his every word now avoided his gaze. One of them stepped forward, his finger pointed directly at Marcus. "Enough, you've misled us for too long. Tonight, the truth has caught you." Marcus stumbled down from the stage, grabbing Victoria's wrist. "You'll stand with me, won't you? Tell them I'm still in control." Victoria pulled her arm free, her voice cold and sharp. "In control? You're finished, Marcus. I won't sink with you." Without another word, she turned and slipped into the crowd, her figure vanishing into the sea of glittering gowns. The humiliation was complete. His mistress had abandoned him. His investors had turned against him, and his empire was no longer his. Guards moved discreetly toward the stage as murmurs grew louder. "Fraud. Liar. Arrogant fool." Sophia watched from across the room, her face calm, her silence speaking louder than any insult could. She didn't need to mock him. His own downfall was the loudest humiliation of all. Marcus reached for Daniel, Sophia's stepbrother, who had been lurking near the edge of the crowd. Daniel, help me! You owe me! But Daniel stepped back, shame washing over his face. No, Marcus, I owe nothing to you. Not anymore. The room closed in around Marcus. Alone, stripped of power, he looked like a shadow of the man who once boasted he was untouchable. As the guards placed a firm hand on his shoulder to escort him out, Marcus twisted to face Sophia. His voice, desperate and broken, rang out. Sophia, please, don't let them take everything from me. The night was quiet now. The gala had ended. The crowd dispersed, and the city below pulsed with faint lights like scattered jewels. Sophia stood in her lofty suite, gazing out at the skyline. The same city that once mocked her now whispered her name with reverence. Behind her, Caleb placed a stack of newspapers on the table. Each headline bore her face. Sophia Bennett, the true power behind Crown Holdings. From betrayed wife to empire owner. Grace entered, smiling proudly. You did it, Sophia, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with strength no one can take away. Sophia turned, her voice calm, steady. I didn't win tonight by shouting louder than Marcus. I won by standing taller in silence. Dignity is louder than cruelty. As if on cue, a knock rattled the door. Caleb opened it cautiously, and there stood Marcus Bennett. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his arrogance completely gone. He dropped to his knees right there in the doorway, his voice trembling. Sophia, I was wrong. I see it now. Without you, I am nothing. Please, give me another chance. Don't leave me in the ashes. The room grew still. Grace's eyes narrowed, but Sophia's face remained serene. She stepped closer, looking down at the man who once cast her aside like dust. Marcus, she said softly, once you had my love, then you chose betrayal, arrogance, and pride. Tonight you reap what you planted. I don't hate you. I pity you. But I will never go back. His shoulders slumped. The guards moved in to escort him away. The door shut, leaving silence in its wake. Sophia turned back to the window, her reflection glowing against the glass. The city stretched before her, vast and endless. She was no longer the woman humiliated, abandoned, or forgotten. She was restored, empowered, untouchable. Sometimes the cruelest betrayal births the strongest resilience. And sometimes, the one cast aside in humiliation rises higher than anyone ever imagined.
Husband threw out his amnesiac wife after an accident, unaware of her $500 million inheritance. He threw his wife out after a terrible accident stole her memory, calling her useless and unworthy of his name. Then walked back inside arm in arm with Vanessa, the family friend who once toasted their union at the wedding table. He never knew Emily carried a fortune that could change generations. Stay out of my sight, Emily. You're nothing but a burden. Pack your things and get out. I refuse to waste my life on a woman who can't even remember who I am. Those were the venomous words Daniel Carter spat as Emily stood trembling, her mind a blank slate, her body still weak from the crash. Instead of standing by her, he abandoned her. Instead of love, he delivered humiliation and rejection in the hour she needed him most. He believed she was finished. But what he never imagined was that the same woman he cast aside as forgotten would rise with a power beyond his reach. A rise that would expose his betrayal, shatter his pride, and bring him to his knees. Sometimes the memories you lose are the chains that free you. Sometimes the woman you treat as nothing becomes the shadow that haunts your every step. This is not just another story of betrayal. It is the cry of a wife despised in her weakest moment, the scars of humiliation turned into strength, and the warning the world too often forgets. Never despise the broken, for they may rise higher than you could ever dream. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. As we step into this story, I ask from my heart, don't just hear her pain and scroll away. Subscribe now, and in the comments share where you're watching from. So Emily and every woman betrayed knows she is not alone. The sound of shattering glass ripped through the night. Emily Carter's car spun out of control, headlights flickering like dying stars as the vehicle skidded across the road and slammed into a pole with a deafening crash. Metal twisted, the windshield splintered, and silence followed. A silence broken only by the hiss of steam and the weak cry that escaped her lips before she slumped unconscious. Neighbors poured out of their homes. Karen Lewis, always eager for gossip, shrieked louder than anyone else. "Somebody call an ambulance! She's not moving!" Her hands flew to her mouth, but her eyes were sharp, already thinking of what story she might carry to the next morning's tea table. The paramedics worked quickly. Emily's chest rose and fell faintly, her skin pale under the flashing red lights. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, the locket Daniel once gave her slipped from her neck. It struck the pavement, snapping in two. No one noticed the broken jewelry, yet in that tiny sound, fate whispered, something precious had been fractured beyond repair. At the hospital, hours later, Dr. Samuel Hayes stepped out of surgery. His coat was stained with the long night's effort, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion, but his voice carried calm authority. Daniel Carter rose from his seat, his expression a mask of forced concern. "She survived," Dr. Hayes began, "but the trauma has wiped her memory. She won't remember who you are, her family, or even her own name. The road back will be long, but with care, patience, and love, there is hope." "Memory loss?" Daniel repeated, his tone flat. His jaw tightened. "So she's nothing? A stranger?" "She is your wife," Dr. Hayes reminded him firmly. "Her mind is fragile now, but she needs you, more than ever." Emily awoke days later, her eyes searching the room in confusion. She looked at Daniel as if he were a passerby. Her voice trembled. Who are you?" Daniel's lips curled bitterly, but Emily's hand, weak and trembling, still reached for his. You feel familiar," she whispered. Even stripped of her memory, Emily's devotion lingered. She would follow him with her gaze as he moved, searching for comfort in the man whose face her heart vaguely remembered, even if her mind could not. When he walked into her hospital room, her whole body seemed to relax. When he walked out, panic clouded her face until nurses soothed her. But Daniel grew cold. Each question she asked wounded his pride. "Where do I belong?" she would ask softly. "You belong at home," he would reply curtly. "And where is home?" His patience snapped. "Stop asking. Just stop." In the quiet hours, Emily clutched the broken locket the nurses had returned to her, running her fingers along the jagged edge. Though her memory was gone, she pressed it to her heart as if it still carried a piece of the love she once knew. Her devotion became visible in the smallest ways. She would sit quietly by Daniel's side, watching him eat, trying to mimic his movements so he would not feel embarrassed by her forgetfulness. She would smile faintly when he entered, her eyes lighting up, even though he rarely returned the warmth. At night, when nurses dimmed the lights, she whispered prayers she barely remembered, asking God to bless the husband whose name slipped through her mind. Daniel, however, saw none of it. To him, every forgotten word, every lost memory was proof that Emily was no longer the woman he had married. Karen Lewis, peering from her window across the neighborhood, carried her version of events to anyone who would listen. "She's broken now," she whispered gleefully to a neighbor. "Poor Daniel. Imagine being stuck with someone who doesn't even know who he is. A burden, that's what she is. Dead weight." At the mansion, Robert Carter, Daniel's father, echoed the same venom in private. "You deserve better, son. A strong wife, not a crippled mind. Emily is finished." Emily did not hear those words. She only felt Daniel's coldness, but still she clung to the hope that her heart was not lying. In her silence, she traced the broken locket and whispered, "Why do I ache for someone I cannot remember? Why does my heart tell me to trust him?" But Daniel's heart had already started drifting. And when Vanessa Moore, the family friend who had once toasted their love at the wedding table, leaned close to comfort him, Daniel did not push her away. Fate was moving fast, and Emily's devotion would not be enough to save her from the storm that was about to break. Next, the mansion gates will echo with betrayal. The sound of shattering porcelain echoed through the dining hall as Daniel slammed his cup onto the table. Tea spilled across the polished wood, dripping down like wasted time. Emily flinched at the noise, her spoon falling from her hand. "For heaven's sake, Emily!" Daniel snapped, his voice sharp. "You can't even hold a spoon without making a mess. How much longer am I supposed to put up with this?" Emily's hands trembled. Her memory was gone, but her devotion remained. She lifted the napkin slowly, trying to wipe the spill before him. I'm sorry, Daniel. I will do better. Please don't be angry. Her soft voice, instead of soothing him, only fueled his bitterness. To Daniel, every mistake reminded him of the woman she no longer was. Vanessa Moore, the family friend who had begun visiting almost daily, slid her chair closer to Daniel with an easy smile. Daniel, don't stress yourself, she said sweetly, her hand brushing his arm. She's been through so much. Maybe what she needs is rest. Her tone dripped with false kindness, but her eyes glimmered with satisfaction. Emily stared at Vanessa with a faint tilt of her head. The face seemed familiar, yet distant, like a dream she couldn't place. She whispered, "Were you at my wedding?" Vanessa's lips curved into a smirk. "Yes, dear," she said, her voice syrupy. "I was right there, smiling for both of you." Robert Carter, Daniel's father, walked into the room just in time to hear. A tall, rigid man with a face carved from stone, he sneered at Emily. "A wife who cannot even remember her wedding day? Pathetic. Daniel, my son, you deserve a real woman, someone who can carry your name with pride. This one is finished." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She turned toward Daniel, hoping he would defend her. Her heart longed for the man who once vowed to protect her. But Daniel stayed silent, his jaw hard, his gaze fixed on Vanessa. Later, when the mansion grew quiet, Emily wandered through the corridors like a stranger. The walls were familiar, yet hollow. She touched framed photographs, searching for herself in the captured smiles, but the faces blurred in her mind. She whispered, "Why can't I remember? Why does he look at me like I'm already gone?" In his study, Daniel poured himself a drink. Vanessa leaned against the desk, her voice low and tempting. "She will never be the wife you need again, Daniel. Why suffer? You deserve happiness. You deserve me." Robert's words from earlier rang in his head. You deserve better. By the time Emily returned to the room, Daniel's decision was already forming like ice in his heart. "Go to bed," he said coldly, not looking at her. "You're no use to me tonight." Emily lowered her gaze. She said nothing, only walked away, her broken locket pressed tightly in her palm. Yet inside her chest, her heart still whispered the same prayer. "Please, Daniel, remember the love we once shared." But prayers would not stop the storm gathering over her head. For the next time she stepped outside the mansion, it would not be as Daniel's wife. It would be as a discarded burden, thrown out into the streets. And at the mansion gates, betrayal would scream louder than her devotion. The mansion gates slammed open with a metallic crash. Daniel's furious voice echoed down the driveway. "Get out of my house, Emily. You're nothing to me now." Neighbors froze. Karen Lewis, who had been trimming her flowers, dropped her clippers in delight at the unfolding drama. Children peeked from behind their mothers. Curious whispers spread as faces pressed against fences. Emily stumbled forward, clutching a small suitcase that Daniel had shoved into her hands. Her eyes were wide, confused, and wet with tears. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "Please, Daniel, don't do this. I don't remember everything, but I know I'm your wife. I know I'm meant to be by your side." Daniel's face hardened, every trace of compassion gone. "Wife?" His voice thundered, drawing gasps from the crowd. "You are nothing but a broken memory. Dead weight. A curse." Vanessa Moore stepped forward from behind him, dressed neatly, her lips curled in satisfaction. She slipped her arm into Daniel's with a confidence that mocked Emily's weakness. "Daniel, let's not waste time. She has no place here." The humiliation cut deeper than any wound. Emily's knees wobbled, her suitcase slipping to the ground with a dull thud. She looked at Vanessa through blurred vision, her voice cracking. You were at my wedding. You smiled with us. How could you?" Vanessa leaned close, her whisper sharp enough for Emily to hear. "Because I was always meant to take your place." The crowd gasped. Karen Lewis whispered to another neighbor. "Did you hear that? Vanessa, the family friend. Oh, this will spread faster than fire." Robert Carter stood proudly on the porch, clapping his hands slowly. "Well done, son. Finally, you've rid yourself of that useless woman. A Carter needs strength, not weakness." His words, cold and sharp, fell like stones onto Emily's chest. Emily bent down to pick up her suitcase, her fingers trembling. The broken locket slipped from her pocket and landed on the stones. She stared at it, her tears dripping onto the cracked metal. In that moment, her reflection shimmered back at her from the jagged surface. A stranger she no longer knew. Her heart cried out, but her lips whispered only one plea. Daniel, please don't leave me like this. Daniel's hand tightened around Vanessa's as he pointed toward the open street. Go, and don't ever come back. From today, you are nothing to me. The gates groaned as they swung shut behind her, the iron bars closing like prison doors. Emily stood on the outside, suitcase by her side, the eyes of the community burning into her back. Her humiliation was complete. She took one trembling step onto the empty road, her body swaying as though the ground itself had betrayed her. The whispers followed like shadows. Broken, abandoned, cursed. Her vision blurred, her legs buckled. And then, in front of the watching crowd, Emily collapsed onto the pavement, her broken locket lying inches from her hand. The neighbors gasped, but none rushed to help. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Vanessa's satisfied smirk framed in the mansion doorway. And so Emily's fall into the dust was complete. But fate was not finished with her, for from the roadside a stranger's hand would soon reach out, and with it the faint spark of a new beginning. Rain began to fall as Emily lay crumpled on the pavement, her body shaking, her breath shallow. Her suitcase lay half open beside her, clothes spilling into the dirt. The broken locket glistened under the raindrops like a tear frozen in metal. The neighbors who had gathered moments earlier whispered among themselves, but none stepped forward. Karen Lewis crossed her arms, muttering, "Poor thing, but what can anyone do?" Daniel was right. She's finished. Others nodded, pitying but distant, unwilling to touch what they called bad luck. A car passed by, slowing just enough for the driver to look. Then it sped off, leaving Emily in the growing storm. Her lips quivered as she tried to call out, "Help! Someone! Please!" But her voice was too weak, drowned by the rain. Then footsteps approached. A woman with a plain scarf tied around her head and a faded coat bent down quickly. "Oh, dear Lord," she whispered. "Child, what have they done to you?" This was Harriet Cole, a caregiver in the community known for her gentle heart and quiet strength. She had little money, but she carried more compassion than most of the wealthy around her. Kneeling beside Emily, she lifted her gently from the ground. "You'll catch your death out here. Come with me. I'll not leave you to suffer." Emily, barely conscious, blinked at the stranger, her words slurred. "Who are you?" "A friend," Harriet said softly, tucking a blanket she carried around Emily's shoulders. "That's enough for now." With effort, Harriet carried her toward a small, weathered house at the edge of the neighborhood. Neighbors whispered again, some shaking their heads. "Harriet's crazy, taking in a broken woman. She'll regret it." But Harriet ignored them, focused only on the fragile figure in her arms. Inside Harriet's modest home, the contrast to the mansion was stark. The walls were plain, the furniture simple, but warmth lingered in every corner. She placed Emily on a small bed, dried her with a towel, and set a steaming cup of tea beside her. For the first time since the accident, Emily felt safe. Her hands trembled as she lifted the cup. She sipped slowly, her eyes brimming with tears. Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Harriet smiled gently. "Because no one deserves to be thrown out like garbage. You may have lost your memory, but I see your pain. And pain deserves kindness." Emily clutched the broken locket tightly, her voice breaking. He said I was nothing. Am I really nothing now?" Harriet reached over, taking her hand firmly. "Listen to me. You are not nothing. You are a woman, still breathing, still alive. Whatever they told you, it's a lie. You will rise again." Emily's tears spilled freely as she whispered, "Rise again." The words felt foreign yet comforting, like a seed planted in broken soil. But outside Harriet's window, unseen by both women, Karen Lewis lingered, peeking through the curtain before rushing away to spread gossip. "Did you see? That poor, useless wife is hiding in Harriet's house now." And across town, Vanessa leaned against Daniel's shoulder at the mansion, smiling with victory, never realizing that the woman she mocked had just found a new protector, and that fate was already weaving her path toward strength. Soon a sealed letter will arrive that changes everything. The shrill cry of a nightmare tore through Harriet's little house in the middle of the night. Emily jolted upright, drenched in sweat, clutching her broken locket so tightly that the jagged edge cut her palm. "No! Don't throw me out! Please, Daniel, don't shut the door!" she screamed, her voice raw with panic. Harriet rushed in, wrapping a blanket around her trembling shoulders. "It's all right, child. You're safe now. No one will hurt you here." Emily buried her face into Harriet's chest, sobbing until her body shook. She could not remember her past, yet the echo of humiliation at the mansion gates haunted her dreams. Her heart clung to the devotion she once gave her husband, even as her mind told her it was gone. By morning, she sat quietly at the small wooden table, trying to pour tea into a cup. Her hands trembled, spilling more than she saved. She whispered, "I'm useless." Maybe he was right. Harriet, steady and patient, took her hand. "Don't ever say that. You're broken, yes, but broken things can be mended. You just need time." Later that day, a familiar face appeared at the door. Dr. Samuel Hayes, the neurologist who had once warned Daniel about patience, stepped inside carrying medical notes. His expression softened when he saw Emily wrapped in Harriet's shawl. "Emily," he said gently, "I know you may not remember me. I'm Dr. Hayes. I treated you after the accident." Emily tilted her head, her eyes wide and searching. "Doctor? Did you know my husband?" "Yes," he replied carefully. "I told him you needed care." He didn't listen. His voice tightened with restrained anger, but then softened. "Still, your recovery is possible. With love, patience, and safety, your memory may return one day." Emily touched her locket, her tears brimming. "But if he wouldn't wait for me, should I even hope?" Before Dr. Hayes could answer, another voice broke in. "Yes, you should." It was Anna Blake, a young law intern assisting Clara Reed, the family lawyer. Barely in her 20s, with bright eyes and nervous determination, she carried an armful of files. "I came with Dr. Hayes," she explained shyly. "Clara sent me to check on you. She said you're important." Emily blinked, surprised. "Important? Me?" Anna nodded, setting the files aside. "You may not feel it now, but your story isn't over. People like Daniel want you silenced, but Clara believes there's something about you that must be protected." Harriet smiled faintly. "See, child? Even strangers can see your worth." For the first time since her accident, Emily let out a small, fragile laugh. It was weak, but it carried hope. She whispered, Maybe I'm not nothing after all." Yet as evening fell, Anna whispered something to Dr. Hayes by the door, her face pale. "Clara said we must prepare her. There's a sealed letter, and when she reads it, everything will change." Emily, unaware of the storm that letter would bring, sat quietly at the table, piecing together a cracked photograph she had found inside her suitcase. She traced her own faint smile in the picture, wondering if one day she would recognize herself again. But fate was moving closer, hidden in ink and paper, and soon a letter would arrive that would shatter the chains of shame and unlock a fortune no one imagined. The pounding at the door came like thunder. Emily jumped, her teacup crashing to the floor. Harriet rushed forward, pulling Emily behind her protectively. "Who is it?" Harriet demanded. A calm, firm voice answered, "Clara Reed. I'm here on legal matters concerning Emily Carter." Harriet opened the door slowly. A tall woman in a tailored navy suit stepped inside, carrying a leather briefcase. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, then softened as they landed on Emily. "You don't know me," Clara said gently, "but I know you. My name is Clara Reed, your late uncle Martin Gray's lawyer." Emily's brows furrowed. "Uncle Martin? I don't remember him." Clara placed her briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside was a thick, sealed envelope stamped with wax. "Your uncle passed away years ago. He was estranged from the family, quiet and very private. But before his death, he entrusted me with this letter. He made me swear it would only be given to you, Emily, At the moment life forced you to stand alone. Emily's hands trembled. Why? Why now? Clara's eyes grew serious. Because your husband threw you out. Because you were humiliated. Because the man who was supposed to protect you abandoned you. Your uncle feared this would happen. He prepared for it. Emily stared at the envelope as if it burned. Her fingers hovered over the seal. What if I don't want to know? Anna, standing close, whispered softly. Sometimes truth hurts less than lies. Open it. With shaking hands, Emily broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The ink faded but strong. Harriet touched her shoulder as Emily began to read aloud. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means the family has failed you. Forgive me for leaving you alone for so long, but I have always watched from afar. You are my heir and I have left you $500 million in trust. It is yours to control, but it must remain secret until you are ready. Do not let greed destroy you. And do not let anyone, and especially Daniel, near this fortune. This wealth is not just money. It is your shield, your weapon, and your second life. Use it with wisdom. Rise, Emily. Rise and show them you are more than they ever believed. The room fell silent. Emily's chest heaved as tears streamed down her face. 500 million? Her voice cracked between disbelief and fear. I don't deserve this. I'm broken. I'm nothing. Clara leaned forward, her eyes steady. No, Emily. That is what they wanted you to believe. But this letter proves you were chosen. You are not broken. You are the heir of strength. Harriet gripped her hand firmly. Child, you've been given a second chance. Take it. Anna smiled softly. This is your new beginning. Emily clutched the letter to her chest, whispering, I will not waste this chance. I will rise. But Clara's gaze darkened slightly. Be careful. Daniel must never find out. If he does, he will come for you, and he will destroy you. The words hung heavy in the room, and outside, in the distance, Daniel's empire was already beginning to tremble, though he didn't yet know why. The crack of Clara Reed's briefcase snapping open filled the small room with sudden tension. The sharp sound startled Emily, who flinched as if struck. Clara, a tall woman in her late 30s with sharp features and steady eyes, leaned across the table. She was not just any lawyer. She was the executor of Martin Gray's will, a woman known in the courts for her precision and refusal to bend to corruption. Listen carefully, she said firmly. From this moment, your inheritance is sealed. I have secured every document in your name, beyond Daniel's reach. No one, not your husband, not your father-in-law, can touch a single cent. Emily's lips parted in shock. Secured? In my name? Yes, Clara said. It is your right, and I am here to defend it with my life, if necessary. Beside her stood Anna Blake, a new face Emily hadn't seen before. Anna was barely 22, a law intern working under Clara. With her round glasses, nervous hands, and a heart that carried more compassion than experience, she stepped forward shyly. I'm Anna, she said softly, her voice trembling. I may be new, but Clara asked me to stand by you as a witness. She said you'd need not just a lawyer, but a friend. Emily blinked back tears, staring at the young woman's earnest face. A friend? Anna nodded quickly. Yes, I'll help however I can. I'll remind you of the truth when others call you worthless. You won't be alone anymore. Harriet Cole, the caregiver who had sheltered Emily, folded her arms with quiet approval. Good. She needs more than pity. She needs fighters around her. Clara slid thick legal folders across the table. These are the trust agreements. They lock away your inheritance of $500 million. Your uncle designed it so Daniel cannot touch it, not even if he suspects. Emily reached out with trembling hands, brushing over the papers as though they might vanish. Her tears fell freely. 500 million. Uncle Martin. He must have loved me more than I ever knew. Clara's voice softened, though her tone remained firm. He saw your worth when others didn't. He knew you might face betrayal one day, and he wanted you prepared. Emily pressed her broken locket to her chest. Daniel called me nothing, but this says I was always something. Harriet leaned close, her hand warm on Emily's. Child, don't let their cruelty decide your value. This is your second chance." Anna's eyes shone with quiet admiration. "Emily, you may not feel it yet, but one day people will look at you as hope itself." For the first time since her accident, Emily managed a fragile smile. "Then I will guard this chance, with everything I have." Clara straightened, her expression tightening again. "Good, but remember, this must stay secret. If Daniel or Vanessa ever hear of this fortune, they will come for you, and Daniel will not stop until he destroys you." The air in the room grew heavy. Emily clutched the letter to her chest, her whisper steady now. "Then let it remain hidden. He will never know." But miles away in the Carter mansion, Daniel raised his glass with Vanessa at his side, boasting loudly about the empire he thought was untouchable. He had no idea that his downfall was already sealed in silence. Emily's scream shattered the quiet morning. "I can't do it," she cried, collapsing onto the floor. A simple attempt to carry a tray of breakfast had ended with broken cups scattered across Harriet's kitchen tiles. Her hands bled from a shard of glass. Harriet rushed in, lifting her gently. "Child, stop blaming yourself," she said firmly. "It's only glass. You are more than your mistakes." But Emily's tears flowed freely. "Daniel was right. I'm useless. Look at me. I can't even hold a tray." Her voice trembled with humiliation, the echo of her husband's words still chaining her heart. Anna Blake knelt beside her. Though young, the law intern carried an unusual fire of empathy. She wrapped a bandage around Emily's hand with careful gentleness. "You are not useless," Anna whispered. "I've seen useless people. They don't even try. But you keep standing, even when it hurts. That is strength." Emily's eyes flickered with doubt, but also with the faintest glimmer of belief. Later that afternoon, Dr. Samuel Hayes arrived for his routine visit. His calm presence filled the small house. "Emily," he said softly, examining her carefully, "your progress is slow, but it is progress. Memory may take time, but healing is already beginning. Don't measure yourself against yesterday. Measure yourself against who you were the day of the accident. You are already stronger." Emily looked down at her bandaged hand, remembering how broken she had felt at the hospital. Her lips trembled. "Do you really think I can be whole again?" Dr. Hayes gave her a steady nod. "I don't think. I know." That night, Emily sat by the window of Harriet's house. She watched the sky darken, pressing her broken locket against her chest. For the first time, instead of praying for Daniel to take her back, she prayed for courage. "Let me rise. Let me not be nothing." Harriet joined her quietly, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. "The world tried to break you, Emily, but sometimes broken pieces shine brighter when put back together." The words settled deep in Emily's heart. She breathed slowly, whispering, "One day I will rise." Anna, sitting on the floor with legal notes spread around her, looked up with a smile. "When that day comes, I'll be there to cheer the loudest." Emily managed a faint laugh, fragile, but genuine. For the first time since her accident, her eyes carried something new, the seed of determination. But outside, shadows gathered. At the Carter mansion, Daniel stood with Vanessa at a grand dinner, raising a toast. "To a new beginning," he boasted, loud enough for the guests to hear. "Emily is gone, and I finally have the life I deserve." Victor Stone, his cunning business rival, sat at the same table, hiding a smirk as he studied Daniel closely. Daniel had no idea that his empire was already being watched, and soon, betrayal would strike not from his wife, but from the very people he trusted most. Crystal glasses clinked as Daniel Carter slammed his wine onto the long dining table. The hall erupted in forced laughter, guests echoing his pride. At his side, Vanessa Moore leaned close, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered, "Let them see us. Tonight, we win." Daniel rose to his feet, raising his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make this clear," he boomed. "Emily is no longer my wife. She was weak, broken, a dead weight. But now I stand with Vanessa, a woman of strength. Together, we will build the Carter legacy greater than ever before." Gasps filled the room. Some guests clapped politely, others exchanged uneasy looks. Among them sat Robert Carter, Daniel's father, beaming with pride. He pounded the table with his fist. "Well said, my son. You've done what needed to be done. The Carter name cannot carry a burden. At the far end of the table, a man leaned back, watching quietly. His name was Victor Stone, a sharp-eyed businessman known for his cunning deals and ruthless strategies. A rival of Daniel's empire, Victor wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He raised his glass lazily and said, "To Daniel Carter, a man who knows how to cut away weakness." Daniel mistook the sarcasm for praise. "Exactly," he declared. "Emily could never give me children, never give me the future I deserved. Vanessa will. She will give me everything Emily stole." Vanessa's hand slid across Daniel's arm, her smile sweet, though her eyes gleamed with ambition. She had what she wanted: the mansion, the attention, the name. But behind closed doors, when the guest turned away, her tone shifted. "Daniel, remember this. Without me, you're nothing. Don't ever forget who stands beside you now." Daniel laughed arrogantly, kissing her cheek. "Without me, you'd still be waiting in the shadows. I made you shine, Vanessa." For a moment, silence pressed between them. But both swallowed their pride, too greedy to risk the other walking away. Meanwhile, in his corner, Victor Stone's mind was already racing. He leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "Daniel thinks he's untouchable, but pride always blinds a man. When the cracks show, I'll be the one to break him." Robert, oblivious to the danger, raised another toast. "To Vanessa, the true Carter wife." The hall rang with forced applause, but outside those walls the community whispered different words. How could Daniel parade another woman so soon? How cruel, how arrogant. Back in her quiet shelter, Emily pressed her broken locket to her chest, though she could not see what Daniel was doing. Her heart trembled as if warning her. She whispered softly, "Something is coming. I can feel it." And she was right, for Vanessa's greed and Victor's cunning would soon weave together, and the empire Daniel boasted of tonight would be the very thing stripped from his hands tomorrow. Vanessa's laughter rang out in the grand sitting room, sharp and mocking. "Daniel," she said, draping herself across the velvet couch, "you think this mansion is enough for me? You think being your new wife is all I want? No, I want more, much more." Daniel, sipping his drink, frowned. "More? Haven't I given you everything? The house, the cars, the title? Titles fade when empires fall," she cut in coldly. "And I don't intend to fall with you." The room stiffened with silence. Robert Carter, Daniel's father, sat nearby, sipping brandy. His voice was hard. "Careful, Vanessa. The Carter name is iron. It cannot be broken." But Victor Stone, the rival businessman, leaned forward from his chair in the corner. He had been invited under the guise of partnership talks, but his eyes gleamed with mischief. "Oh, Robert," Victor said smoothly, "every empire has a weak point. Even iron rusts, and I know exactly where Daniel's weaknesses are." Daniel straightened in anger. "Watch your tongue, Victor." Vanessa, however, smiled sweetly at Victor. "Tell me," she purred, "what do you see?" Victor smirked. "A proud man building castles on sand. A man who trusts too easily. A man who doesn't realize his so-called allies are watching for the perfect time to strike." Before Daniel could speak again, another figure entered. Felicia Grant, Vanessa's closest friend, a woman with fiery red lipstick and an even sharper tongue. She threw herself onto the couch beside Vanessa, laughing. "Vanessa, why waste yourself on one man? Daniel's pockets are deep, yes, but why settle when there are deeper ones waiting?" She glanced at Victor knowingly. "Deeper and sharper." Vanessa's smile widened. "Exactly." Robert slammed his glass down. "Enough! You speak like traitors under my roof." But Daniel only laughed arrogantly, mistaking their hints for idle talk. "Let them talk, father. They'll see soon enough that I cannot be broken." Later that night, Vanessa met Victor privately on the balcony. The city lights glittered below, but greed glittered brighter in her eyes. "You can strip him of his contracts?" she asked. Victor nodded. "One by one. With your help inside, I'll dismantle his empire until he has nothing left. And when he's desperate, he'll crawl at your feet. Then you decide if you still want him." Felicia joined them, her voice sly. "And if you tire of him, Vanessa, there's Anthony Rivers, a richer man." A man who could make you a queen. Vanessa's heart raced at the thought. Then let it begin, she whispered. Behind the closed doors, Robert Carter muttered to Beatrice, the family elder who often agreed with him. Daniel may think he controls her, but Vanessa is fire. Fire consumes. And down the hallway, Daniel poured himself another drink, blind to the storm gathering at his back. The empire he flaunted so loudly was about to be torn apart, and the first betrayal would come from the woman he thought was his victory. The knock at Harriet's door came like a storm. Hard, sharp, insistent. Harriet froze mid-step, her eyes narrowing. No one visits at this hour, she muttered. Emily, seated at the table with Anna, stiffened. Her hands clutched the broken locket. Fear clouded her face. Who is it? Before Harriet could answer, the door burst open. Daniel Carter stepped inside without waiting, his expensive cologne filling the modest room. His eyes darted around, and for the first time in weeks they landed on Emily. Emily, he said, his voice dripping with false softness. You look better. Emily's heart pounded. Part of her still longed for him, the man she once loved, the man her heart remembered even if her mind did not. But another part of her trembled with anger, recalling the gates where he had thrown her out like trash. Why are you here? She whispered. Daniel stepped closer, his smile practiced. I couldn't sleep. I thought of you. I needed to see how you were doing. Harriet quickly stepped between them, her eyes blazing. Liar! You didn't care when she was bleeding in the streets. Don't pretend you care now. Daniel's mask cracked for a second, but he smoothed it over. I admit I was angry, but people make mistakes. Emily, you belong with me. Come back home. Let's forget the past. Anna stood, her fists clenched. Forget the past? You humiliated her in front of the whole community. You called her nothing. And now you come crawling here? Daniel's jaw tightened. Stay out of this, little girl. This is between a husband and his wife. Emily rose slowly to her feet, her body still weak, but her voice carried a steadiness that surprised even her. No, Daniel, this is not between a husband and wife. That ended the day you shut the gates on me. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Fine. Then tell me the truth. How are you paying for this place? How are you surviving? Who's helping you? His question sliced through the air. Harriet's face hardened. Anna's stomach dropped. Daniel's mask of pity had slipped, and his true motive was clear. He wasn't there for Emily's well-being. He was hunting for her resources. Emily's tears welled, but she didn't look away. It doesn't matter who helps me. What matters is that it's not you, Daniel sneered. So you do have help. I knew it. Someone's giving you money, aren't they? His voice grew sharp, desperate. Tell me who it is. Emily took a step back, clutching her broken locket, her chin trembling but lifted. I will tell you nothing. Not today. Not ever. Daniel's face darkened, anger flashing in his eyes. For a moment, it seemed he might explode, but Harriet's firm voice cut in, steady as iron. Get out of my house before I drag you out myself. Daniel glared at them all, his fists tightening. This isn't over, Emily. I will find out. And when I do, his voice trailed off, leaving the threat heavy in the air. He slammed the door behind him, the walls shaking with the force. Emily sank back into her chair, tears falling. But this time, they were not only tears of weakness. They carried defiance. Anna knelt beside her, whispering, He suspects. We need to be careful. Very careful. And she was right, because Daniel's next move would draw the eyes of people far more dangerous than himself. The shredder whirred furiously in Daniel Carter's office as papers vanished one by one. His hands moved quickly, sweat glistening on his forehead. Burn it all, he barked at his secretary. If anyone asks, these contracts never existed. What Daniel didn't know was that across town, another man was already digging into his empire. Marcus Hale, a seasoned forensic accountant with sharp eyes and a reputation for exposing corporate lies, sat in a quiet office lined with files. Known in legal circles as the Bloodhound, Marcus could sniff out corruption where others saw nothing. Beside him sat Mia Foster, his eager 24-year-old assistant, scribbling notes as fast as her hands allowed. Look at this, Marcus said. slamming a document on the table. Daniel Carter's company claimed a profit margin of 40% last quarter, but the invoices show payments disappearing into shell accounts overseas. Someone's hiding money. Mia leaned forward, her eyes wide. That's not just sloppy bookkeeping. That's fraud. Do you think he's stealing from his own investors? Marcus nodded grimly. It's bigger than that. He's bleeding his empire to cover debts. Debts no one else even knows about. He pulled out another folder, one delivered discreetly by Clara Reed. Clara, Emily's lawyer, had quietly handed Marcus sealed evidence weeks ago. Clara was right, Marcus muttered. This man's empire is a castle built on sand. Mia's pen paused. But why would Clara care about Daniel Carter? Marcus looked at her over his glasses. Because the woman Daniel threw away, Emily Carter, matters more than he realizes. Clara said Emily's future depends on this truth being exposed. For a moment, silence filled the room. Mia whispered, almost to herself, so she's the one he abandoned. And now, he's the one who might lose everything. Meanwhile, back at the Carter mansion, Daniel poured himself a drink, blissfully unaware of the storm forming. Vanessa lounged nearby, her laughter filling the room. You worry too much, she teased. No one can touch you. Daniel smirked arrogantly. You're right. I've covered every track. No accountant in the world can break me. But in Marcus's office, pages of financial records piled high, every number a nail in Daniel's coffin. Mia pointed to one transfer with wide eyes. Marcus, look at this. A $10 million wire to an account under Vanessa Moore's name. Marcus froze, his jaw tightening. He's not just cooking the books. He's funneling money to his mistress. This isn't carelessness. This is corruption, Mia whispered. If this comes out, it will destroy him. Marcus closed the file, his voice low but steady. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Piece by piece, we will expose him until there's nothing left for him to hide. The lamp flickered, casting shadows across the office. Marcus's eyes hardened, already seeing the inevitable. And soon his findings would not just shake Daniel's empire. They would bring the law itself crashing down on him. The gavel slammed down in court with thunderous force. All assets of Daniel Carter are hereby frozen, Judge Linda Howard declared, her voice sharp and unyielding, pending full investigation of fraud and misappropriation. Daniel shot to his feet, his face pale. This is outrageous, he shouted. I am the Carter name. No judge can strip me of my legacy. From the gallery, Detective Brian Scott, the officer assigned to Daniel's corruption case, rose calmly. His badge glinted under the fluorescent lights. Your legacy ends today, Carter. The evidence is clear. Across the courtroom, Victor Stone, Daniel's cunning business rival, leaned back in satisfaction. His smirk widened as he whispered to an associate, The empire is mine now. Pride always makes a man blind. Vanessa sat near the front, crossing her legs elegantly, but her eyes darted nervously. She had no intention of falling with Daniel. Later that evening, at a gala glittering with lights, Vanessa slipped her arm around Anthony Rivers, a wealthier investor whose charm and deep pockets had long tempted her. She laughed, her eyes never once turning back to Daniel, who stood alone in the crowd, whispers surrounding him. Vanessa, Anthony said smoothly, a woman like you deserves better than a sinking ship. Stay with me, and you'll never know lack again. Vanessa's heart raced. Without hesitation, she kissed his cheek and left Daniel standing humiliated in the center of the room. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Vanessa, his voice cracked with disbelief. You can't leave me. Not now. Not when I've given you everything. But Vanessa didn't look back. She walked away, hand in hand with Anthony, her smile bright with victory. At the edge of the gala, Felicia Grant, Vanessa's so-called friend, whispered cruelly, See? Loyalty doesn't pay when money speaks louder. And when Anthony later discarded Vanessa for another woman, her fall was just as swift as her betrayal. Alone and mocked, she was cornered at a table by Gloria Daniels, a rival socialite with a venomous grin. Gloria's voice dripped with scorn. So, this is the mighty Vanessa? You traded love for greed and still ended up with nothing. Look at you now, forgotten, unwanted. Vanessa's face burned as she realized her kingdom of lies had collapsed. Meanwhile, Daniel staggered out of the gala into the cold night. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. "Mr. Carter, is it true your mistress deserted you? Are you bankrupt? Did you steal from your own investors?" Flashes from cameras blinded him as he pushed through the crowd, his voice breaking. "Leave me alone. I'm still Daniel Carter. I'm still—" But the words died in his throat. His empire was gone. His father Robert's name was disgraced. His mistress had betrayed him. For the first time, Daniel stood truly alone. And as he collapsed to his knees on the steps outside the gala, one thought seared through his mind. The wife he had called nothing now held everything, and soon he would be forced to face her again. The mansion gates that once threw her out now shook with desperate pounding. "Emily, Emily, please, open the door." Daniel's voice cracked like broken glass, carrying into the night. His once polished suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Inside Harriet's small home, Emily sat calmly, holding her restored locket. Clara had helped repair it, symbol of her healing. Harriet peeked through the curtain. "It's him," she whispered. "The man who abandoned you is on his knees." Anna clenched her fists, anger burning in her young eyes. "He has no right to be here. After everything, he dares to beg?" Clara placed a hand on Anna's shoulder. The lawyer's voice was firm but steady. "Patience. Emily must decide this moment for herself." The pounding grew louder. "Emily, I was wrong. I was blind. Vanessa betrayed me. My empire is gone. My father disgraced. Please forgive me. Take me back. We can start over." Emily rose slowly, her heart pounding, but her steps steady. She opened the door. The sight of Daniel on the ground nearly broke her. Once a man of arrogance, now reduced to a beggar in the streetlight. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Daniel crawled forward, clutching her dress. "You're still my wife. You always will be. Please save me." Emily's tears glistened, but her voice carried dignity, not weakness. "The day you called me nothing, Daniel, was the day you stopped being my husband. You threw me out when I needed love the most. You chose humiliation over devotion, and now you reap what you sowed." Daniel's face twisted in despair. "I was foolish. I let greed blind me. Give me another chance." Behind Emily, Marcus Hale, the forensic accountant, stepped into the doorway. His calm voice cut like steel. "Daniel Carter, you don't need a wife's forgiveness. You need a judge's mercy, and that you won't find." The community gathered outside, whispers rippling like fire. "Is that Daniel Carter? Begging? To the wife he abandoned?" The same neighbors who once mocked Emily now watched in awe. Harriet's voice rang out from behind Emily. "Stand tall, child. This is your moment." Emily lifted her chin, her tears drying. She looked at Daniel with grace, not hatred. "I forgive you, Daniel, but I will never return to you. My life is not yours to claim anymore." Daniel's grip loosened, his body trembling as he collapsed fully onto the ground. The crowd gasped at the finality of her words. Emily turned, stepping back into her home. The locket around her neck caught the light, no longer broken, but whole again. Just like her. The community erupted in cheers, not for Daniel, but for Emily. The woman once discarded, now risen in strength and dignity. But as she closed the door gently, Clara's voice carried a quiet warning. "This chapter may be over, Emily, but the world is still watching. What you choose to do with your inheritance will decide the legacy you leave." And thus the final decision of Emily's new life still lingered in the air. The wail of sirens shattered the night. Red and blue lights painted the street outside Harriet's home as police cars screeched to a halt. Doors slammed. Officers swarmed. At their head stood Detective Brian Scott, tall, calm, and unflinching. His voice carried authority as he read aloud, "Daniel Carter, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and corporate misconduct. You have the right to remain silent." Daniel's body crumpled further into the dirt, his hands shaking as cuffs snapped around his wrists. "No, you can't do this. I'm Daniel Carter. I built everything. I am the Carter name." The crowd jeered. Neighbors who once cheered his arrogance now shouted curses. "You're nothing without her," one cried. "Shame on you," another spat. Judge Linda Howard herself had arrived, summoned for the case's urgency. Standing in her black robe, she declared firmly, "Justice has no favorites. You ruined lives for greed. Tonight, the law has found you." Marcus Hale, standing beside Clara Reed, handed over the final evidence files. "Every number, every transfer, the truth is here," he said calmly. Mia, his assistant, nodded eagerly at his side, her eyes bright with pride. Through it all, Emily stood silently on the porch. Her broken locket, now repaired, glistened against her chest. The same community that once whispered useless, now whispered a different word. Strong. Harriet touched her shoulder gently. "Child, you don't need to say anything. Your life already speaks." Emily's gaze fell on Daniel, now shoved into the back of the police car. His once proud face was pale, desperate, begging even as the door closed. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Emily did not smile, nor cry. She simply whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel. I release you." Tears rolled down Daniel's cheeks as the car drove away, swallowed by the night. The crowd turned to Emily, clapping, cheering, some even crying. For them, this wasn't just justice. It was redemption. Anna Blake, unable to hold back, rushed to hug Emily. "You did it. You stood tall. You've shown every betrayed woman that dignity is greater than revenge." Clara stepped forward, her sharp expression softening. "Your inheritance is secure, your name is clean, and your story is stronger than ever. Now the choice is yours. How will you use this gift?" Emily raised her repaired locket to the sky. Her voice was steady, carrying across the street. "I will not waste it. I will build a foundation for women like me, the abandoned, the broken, the silenced. No woman will stand alone the way I once did." The community erupted in applause, tears glistening in their eyes. As the night settled, Emily stepped back into Harriet's home, her heart lighter. She had been a wife humiliated, a woman forgotten, but now she stood as something far greater, a voice for others. Her story had begun with betrayal, but it ended with strength. And as the locket caught the last light of the night, one truth echoed in every heart. Sometimes the woman you call nothing becomes the power you can never silence.